So Kirk seems to think that Ron was more likely to have created the Baroness rather than Larry, as Hasbro's lawyers were skeptical of the legalities of comics originated characters and the potential royalties involved. So I think that, again, this is probably just crossed wires about what the origins of the Baroness were versus maybe later on in the process. So I think later on, post issue 1, it might have been more the case. In the run up to issue 1, Marvel seemed to have a much more sort of influential role in the creation of the line. So, for example, they actually suggested the name Cobra and so on. And so, with that, more collaborative process of the creation of G.I. Joe property in the run up to the comic going live, possibly Hasbro were more confident in the ownership of the IP up to that point, and maybe later on, past the initial ideation phase, and with the likes of the October Guard, where some of the copyright issues might have been more complicated, given that the October Guard were a pre-existing team based on this creator-owned concept of the Private Patrol, that once they were past that sort of initial phase, maybe they were a little bit more careful about using ideas from the comics. So now on screen are some sculpture model designs from Ron Rudat and figure presentation art, both from 1983, so dated a year after the comic is out. So, on the basis of the dating of these designs, there seems to be little doubt that the toy design comes well after the comic. But what is striking about this late stage art is that the Baroness is shown without her iconic glasses and instead has a metallic Cobra headband. So presumably late into the process, someone decided to switch out this headband, remove the headband, and add on the glasses. And it makes sense to include the glasses because by this point she'd been shown with the glasses in the comic and also in the cartoon, so was already had this kind of iconic look to her. So this is possibly why Ron remembers the addition of the glasses, because presumably there was a point where they were not in the design sheet and added in quite late into the process. And then another interesting tidbit that kind of supports this is that there was a Baroness featured on the cover to a Find Your Fate book called Operation Deathstone, and the cover to that is painted by the foil card artist Hector Garrido, and it looks like here the Baroness is shown without the glasses, and while she doesn't have the headband, it looks like possibly this image may have originated with a headband, which was then painted over. So the pose is the same as on the carded figure, but she doesn't have her trademark glasses, and she has a higher hairline. So that higher hairline might suggest that the painting could have originally had a headband on it and then painted over. Again, no glasses as per the initial presentation art, suggesting that the change to add them in was quite late in the game. Now, that all of this aside, there's an interesting, much earlier first appearance of the Baroness. So the Baroness is the name of a short-lived series of espionage novels by Paul Kenyon, and these 8 novels in the series were published from 1974 through to 1975 by Pocket Books. This is 8 years or so before the character of the Baroness is launched in the pages of the G.I. Joe comic. The interesting connection between this book and G.I. Joe, beyond just the name of the Baroness and the fact that she's a character in black leather, is that the book covers were illustrated by Hector Garrido, the man who illustrated the G.I. Joe toy art, including the Baroness art. So my personal feeling, probably just an interesting coincidence, but who knows? Perhaps the idea of a long-haired, gun-toting, sexy, black leather-clad character out there in ether may have made an impression on Larry Hama, possibly only subliminally. So 3D Joe's Carson Metaxas had this to say on this particular subject. Just 6 years before being hired to illustrate A Real American Hero, Hector Garrido illustrated a series of paperbacks titled The Baroness. Beyond the title character being a sexy super spy all clad in black, which is a big coincidence when we consider the leading Cobra female that would emerge in the 1982 G.I. Joe A Real American Hero comic, you'll also note several explosions on the book covers. Many of these explosions feature the same colour palette as the explosions created for the Real American Hero packaging. When asked if the Baroness Flicker of Doom cover could have inspired a Real American Hero explosion, Ed Morrill replied, "It's absolutely possible, but we wanted more of a graphical device, less of a realistic explosion." So yeah, interesting history, and who knows if to what extent that could have inspired any knock-on influence on G.I. Joe. So I hope you enjoyed this delving back into the origins of the Baroness in our Secret Files episode. Look out for more similar episodes delving into some of the secret history of G.I. Joe. So you keep your eyes peeled for that, as well as in our normal episodes looking into the detail of the G.I. Joe comics. Head on over to Talking Joe to find us and all of the links to the places that we are. So until next time, nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast. Laters.